Gospel of John. I'm going to wrap this thing up today about this new covenant of grace. Because I talked to you a lot about how a lot of what Jesus did and said was in preparation for the new covenant of grace, because he hadn't died yet, including some of the things that he said. You can't put everything in that category. I'm not suggesting that you should, but there are certain things that obviously are. But what's interesting is the book of John is very different than Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You know that Matthew, Mark, and Luke, told a bunch of the things that Jesus did, the miracles, the parables. John doesn't include a lot of that stuff because he has a very different goal, and he wrote it at a very different time. He actually wrote it much later. He wrote it, some say 30 years later or more than Mark. Mark is thought to be the first gospel, and the other's written a little later, but John's way later. Why is that significant? Well, did you read the book of Revelation? He had an encounter with a man named Jesus. In other words, he was there with Jesus, seeing face-to-face kind of stuff. And John's task, as you know, John was the apostle of love. He got that love from Jesus himself. He was the disciple whom Jesus loved. Do you like that about John? I love that in John's gospel. Many times he refers to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. Now you could either call that arrogant and prideful, or you could say he knew who he was. He knew who he was. He knew this was about love. He was the one, it says, when at the table, he's the one reclining, listening to the heartbeat of Jesus. He's the one that wanted to know what's on your heart, Lord. What are you feeling? He was the one in the inner circle. And I don't think that's a coincidence that he was in the inner circle and the one who got love. So I'm sharing that with you because his gospel is very different than the others. And so you can see, and he wrote it much later. So he's writing it looking back, looking at the whole gospel of grace thing in a very different context. And so his is the most clear, in my opinion, the very most clear about, he gets it. He says, indeed, from the fullness of Jesus, we have all received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth have come through Jesus Christ. So he's clearly differentiating one from the other. Okay? And then he's the one who writes, he's telling Jesus' words, but he's the one who writes, for God sent his Son into the world not to judge the world, but so that through him the world might be saved. No one who believes in him will be judged. Okay, so this is, there's a lot more I could say about John, but I like all of the Gospels for different reasons, but I love John's Gospel because he so gets the heart of Jesus and this finished work, the grace message. The grace message that Jesus bought for us. And what we really get down to is that love is the answer. And so John is the one who writes. It's the only place you're going to find it in the four Gospels is John's Gospel. The new commandment, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. As you receive it, you give it. A couple other passages about love, because this is what it all boils down to. You were called to be free. Do not use your freedom as an opening for self-indulgence, but be servants to one another in love. Why do I bring this up? Because some people, the fear when you talk about the new covenant of grace is, well, they're just going to do whatever they want with grace. And the answer is they can. You can absolutely trash grace if you want to. The more you understand it the way it is from one who loves you, you don't trash it. You actually treasure it. And you begin to love people with his love instead of just trying to love people. But you can use it for self-indulgence. You can use it to ruin your own life and to ruin the lives of people around you. You absolutely can use your freedom to do that. It's not a wise choice. And honestly, I just had this conversation with someone very close to me just a little while ago. The truth is that once you're born again, and especially as you get Spirit-filled, you're just a lousy sinner. You're no good at sinning, is what I'm trying to say. You're just no good at it because you can't enjoy it anymore. You could try, and believe me, people do. They'll just get. Sometimes people get fed up. Sometimes because they get caught back into rule keeping again, and it just gets too much. And they're like, forget it. Sometimes it's because they get hurt for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're just tired of it. I want to do what I want to do. They just want to have a temper tantrum. Okay, go for it, and then see how it works for you. Because the thing is you can't. You're miserable because you've got the Spirit of God living in you. So does God care about holiness? Heck yeah. So much so that He put His Holy Spirit inside of you. That's how much He cares. So this isn't the grace message isn't about do what you want and who cares and whether you're holy or not. No, it's about you living your true self. And God cares so much that He put His Holy Spirit in you. And what's the goal in the end? It's to serve each other in love. Because, Romans 13, love fulfills all the laws. There's more to the verse, but that's the punchline. Love fulfills all of the laws. Love, 1 Corinthians 8:9, love doesn't use your freedom to trip someone else up. What that means is, I'll just give you an example. Drinking wine. Is it okay or is it not okay? My question is, what is the Holy Spirit telling you? Yes? All right. Good. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yea, God. Nod. I rejoice in every one of those revelations. So, yes. So what was shared for you who couldn't hear that is that the holiness is in us because the Holy Spirit's there. So it's already in us. We just get to live it out. The holy is already in there. Holy Spirit. Yep. So, which is why asking a question like, is it okay or is it not okay to drink alcohol? My answer is, what is Holy Spirit telling you? That's the right answer. Now that really bothers some Christians who say, no, there's a rule for everything. And what's so funny, just using drinking as an example, those that say you cannot drink ever, and and they make a big deal of wanting to preach that. Well, then they gotta do some things to the Scriptures, and they'll start telling you that the wine is actually grape juice and it's wasn't really fermented. Well, then why does Paul later say don't get drunk on wine? You got to start doing amazing gymnastics to start making all the law work in a message of grace, because it doesn't. What does work is what's Holy Spirit telling you, because your goal is you want to be as close to the Lord as possible. He's the yummy one. He's the one that fulfills your heart. And what Paul was trying to say with alcohol is, look at, when you're getting drunk, you're trying to fill a void that only the Lord can. And let me tell you, being filled with the Spirit is way better than alcohol anyway. He's just saying, you want a real high? Go for that one. So what's the Holy Spirit saying? Now this is really, if the last one didn't, toast your bread a little bit, this one will. Because it can change from season to season in your life. And what He tells one person, He won't necessarily tell the next person. But it can change from season to season. He can say to you, yep, it's okay now, and nope, it's not okay now, and yep, it's okay again. And that almost sounds wishy-washy. No, it's someone who loves you and knows what you're going through and knows what's best for you. So He can tell you things like that. Now, when this says don't trip somebody up, I'm using this as an example. When we have communion at Blazing Fire, we do intinction, which I'm pretty sure we're going to do tomorrow, by the way. I want to have communion together. But that's where you dip the bread in juice or wine and eat it like that. Now, when we do this at Blazing Fire, we have 1 cup that's wine and 1 or 2 that's grape juice, and we let people know what they are. Because for some, even just a little bit, if they're just like, alcohol's destroyed their life, and God said no more, and even a little taste is going to send them someplace they don't want to go, why would we do that? Love doesn't do that. But I know some people who will insist and say, well, no, we're free, we could do whatever we want, so they want their freedom to be everybody's freedom in the exact same way. And it doesn't work that way. We have freedom to follow the Holy Spirit. He will tell us. The more we want Him and the more we want to live a life of love, a love relationship, love does want to please. And again, not in a religious kind of way, but just because it's what you do with someone that you love. So that's the kind of relationship He's drawing us into. He's saying, yeah, you can live the law. The law is a babysitter until you learn to listen to the Holy Spirit. That's another way of saying it. Because there are some things. Should we tithe or not? You know what? You could do arguments both ways. I will tell you, you are not bound by tithing. God's not disappointed with you. You are not less than. He doesn't like you less, love you less if you don't do that. Really, what Paul says in the New Covenant, actually this is a great example. In the New Covenant, he's like, give extravagantly, give generously, give with the heart of God. Give because it's coming back at you anyway. And the more you do that, the more God can entrust to you. That's the parable of the talents. And so if you're living I don't have a hoarding life, you're missing out on huge blessings that are coming your way. Now, so that's not legalistic. That's not 10% you're in, 9%. So it's funny the games we've played with that. I don't know where else I was going with that, so I'm going to stop. I'm looking at the time, but the Spirit will let you know. And you know what? He'll tell you to do crazy things. None of this 10% stuff. He'll be like, oh, why don't you give more than you have and watch me make up for it. He'll do all kinds of crazy things. I won't say he's a prankster exactly, because no, I'm just kidding. Not at all. He's super good. And the last one, I already said that. Lovers want to please each other, so what is Holy Spirit saying to you? And again, the more we get the grace and the love, the more we put on the grace glasses, we are going to see people the way God sees them. Lonnie, are you ready? Because we're going on to a video here. Right, but you were going to do it at the same time, you said.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, we are going to watch a video. This is a video by Leif Hetland. This was actually not his last book, because he just put another one out, but a book that he put out about a year ago when he was at Blazing Fire. And he's a guy who gets the love message big time, but he wrote this book. So this video is actually promoting the book, but I love the video so much. I mean, the book's great, don't get me wrong, but I want you to see the video for how he portrayed this grace, and how once you get the grace, you will see others differently.
There are 6.9 billion of us on the earth. Most of us have an incorrect view of God, and because of that, most of us have an incorrect view of the world around us. How do you view the world around you? What if you could view the world from a new perspective that would change the way you live your life from day to day? What would happen if instead of viewing people as a problem, you could view them as a promise? It's time for the church to get an upgrade in their view of God. It's time for the world to know the heart of God after His children. It's time for the sons and daughters of the kingdom to carry this message of love to the ends of the earth. In a world of lost and orphaned children, the Father is calling them back into His family through this message of love. It's time for the Father's children to see themselves the way the Father sees them.